if you're active in the space, if you're looking to get active in the space, if it's something where you are beginning your journey and or you're a seasoned real estate investor, getting on other podcasts is a great way to get your message out. Today's date is November 30th, 2022. I am so privileged to have been able to have a podcast for the last 2 years that has been a daily show. And having 730 episodes produced, I've only done maybe 4 solo episodes. That means I got to interview 726 basically guests, 725, 727, somewhere in there. 700 people on the show. I know there's some other longer running daily real estate podcasts out there. They're great shows. Kudos to them for getting it done and for sticking with it for that long. I will say the question that I get often asked is, what is podcasting? Why do you do a daily real estate podcast? And I'll say it's done several things for me, and it's usually none of the things that people think about as to advantages to running a daily podcast. One is that on a weekly basis, I get to collaborate with, to coordinate with, get to know people all over the United States doing some of the coolest projects across the country. I mean, how great is that to be like, oh, hey, yeah, I'm looking to buy something in random city X. And I'm like, oh, have you talked to so-and-so over there? I know that they're working on projects that look like it gives you an industry insight maybe that most other people wouldn't have, because what you hear on air is not all the conversation that happens before and after the show is recorded. I mean, I think that's probably some of the best parts of the podcast is actually the people I get to talk to before we ever actually hit record. I mean, there's some really cool stuff. I mean, last night I was texting back and forth with a guest I had on earlier this week. Like, hey, I've got an asset in a city that you might be interested in. Actually, it wasn't my asset. That's a misstatement. I have a cousin who owns an asset in a city that she's looking to sell. And I know you're buying these types of assets. You guys should connect. That's really cool to be able to make those introductions. Now, does that help my business? Not necessarily, but it's certainly a way to stay in touch with the industry and get a sense of where people are and what they're doing that if you just read the news or just listen to the podcast, you may not get. So it's been of great help to me. It also has built an incredible Rolodex. And again, I'm talking about the benefits it's done for me, and you'll find out why that matters for you here in a little bit, but it has built an incredible Rolodex of industry contacts. I call it speed networking. Imagine this. I mean, if you go to a conference, you might talk to 50 people while you're there if you're particularly energetic, and of those you might stay in touch with 1 or 2, maybe 3 through over the course of the next 12 months. I get to do that every single week, and that's really cool. Or I should say I've gotten to do that. I've been able to do that every single week, and it's been just a fantastic journey to be on. The downsides to podcasting, and of course then I guess we'll talk about one more upside for the guest, is that we have awesome listeners like yourself that have been here with me, watch the show grow. It's been really cool just to see the explosive growth. We've had 15x growth here in the 10. Actually, it's more like 12 if you want to be exact. 12x growth, 12 times growth this year in 2022 of the active listenership of the show, which has been phenomenal. But what it does for the guests that comes on the show, and this is where it pertains to you as a listener, if you're active in the space, if you're looking to get active in the space, if it's something where you are beginning your journey and or you're a seasoned real estate investor, getting on other podcasts is a great way to get your message out. This is going to blow your mind maybe. It kind of blew mine when I finally started tallying it up. I'm like, oh my gosh, this is expensive. But we spend $250 maybe out the door per episode, from guest acquisition to getting them onboarded, to getting the show recorded, to actually even before the show gets recorded, one of our team members is reaching out, following up, making sure guests are prepared for the show, then getting them on, recording the show. And then once it gets live and goes through editing, gets published. And then by the time we then market the show, once it's over, yeah, we're $250 an episode in. That's a lot. It's a lot of money, but what does that do for you as a guest? If you're thinking about getting on a podcast and you're in your real estate journey and you haven't yet done it, I will tell you, be proactive about it. Go get on some shows, put a great deal, put a great one sheet together that tells a good podcast host, hey, this is who I am. This is why I am unique. This is what I bring to the industry. This is our approach. These are the things I could talk about. Here's some really key questions you could ask me. I think one of the harder things for me as a show host is when somebody's like, I said, hey man, one of my key questions when somebody comes on the show, even though they have a great onboarding and have a great guest guide that kind of tells them, hey, here's the typical flow of the show. I say, what are some things that are relevant to your business right now that you absolutely want to make sure that we talk about today? Oftentimes, more often than not, I get somebody, they say, hey, here's something we're working on that's really cool. You hadn't thought about it. Oh, okay, well, make sure I write that down. We'll just put some bullet points down. Not that it's canned questions, but they're just things that as the show carries on, I want to make sure I don't forget to actually touch back base on. Like, oh, hey, we're doing some really cool stuff in sort of the low income housing tax credit. Okay, well, let's talk about LIHTC. Hey, we're doing a really unique take on multifamily development. Okay, well, what is that? And then make sure we talk about that. Have those things in a one sheet that's ready for the podcast host. Like, here's some things you can ask me. Here's 5 questions that you absolutely must ask me. Here's a question, Sam, I want to make sure, anyway, you get the point. Those are things that you need to be doing if you're on your real estate journey, is getting on a podcast. Get on a show, go get interviewed. I mean, we get our show and it's not the most widely downloaded show in the US. It's in the top 0.5%, which is pretty great. I feel good about that. I feel pretty good about having a show in the top 0.5% of all, really, I think it's all podcasts, but all real estate podcasts in particular. I like that. That's a good spot to be in. But in order to do that, it's important for you to get on shows like mine and some others in order to get your name and your brand and all those things out there. I got somebody call me the other day and they said, man, I don't know what your algorithm is or YouTube's algorithm or whatever. He goes, but dude, every time somebody looks me up, the first thing they see is an interview that you did with me and it's published on YouTube and it comes to the top of Google. I'm like, that's good. I didn't do it on purpose. Probably just the way it all worked out. And obviously if I understood Google's algorithm, I'd be a lot richer than I am right now. But I don't. Either way, it doesn't matter. Your name got out there and that was the point of it. He said, I'd probably done a much better job if I'd have known. I kind of just laughed. It's a friend of mine. So, we were just being funny, but it was a true statement. That's it's important for you to get your brand and your message out there, and podcasts are a great way to do it. Lastly, there are downsides for me as a podcast host. One, this has been 100% supported out of my own pocket, which has been great. I don't mind it. It's been fun. I've enjoyed it, but the format of our show is changing. So for those of you who are used to seeing an episode come out every single day, we are in the midst of just explosive growth, and we've got opportunity everywhere. And I've got to dedicate some of my time, really, because I lose every Tuesday to podcasting. 20% of my work week is dedicated solely to podcasting, and I can't do that here in the short term. So the show is going to change format a bit. This is the last day of a 2-year run of a daily show, and we may resume episodes. It might be 90 days, 120 days before we move into the next season. But here, over the course of the next 2, 3, 4 months, the show is actually going to slow down quite a bit, and we may go to 2 to 3 episodes a week, which is a bit of a heartbreak for me because I've told you all the reasons I love doing a podcast, but I must also freely admit that time is the one thing I can't create more of. And right now I've just got to focus in. So, it probably doesn't matter to you that much. You're going to say, hey man, I'll listen to the episodes when they come out, but it's going to slow down a little bit here in the short term. And that's okay. That's okay. It will pick it back up when the timing is right. But just want to give you a heads up and say thanks to you, our listeners, for being so supportive, for giving me feedback, for reaching out, for listening to our guests, for reaching out to them. It means the world to me to know that I've brought guests on board and that they have had meaningful conversations and connections with you, our listeners, once they've come on a show. Because that's the reason so many guests come on a show, is to have other listeners reach out to them. I've had people call me just straight off which is fine, Call my cell phone. Hey, I heard you on a podcast. Great, let's talk. Like, what can I do for you? How can I be of service? Those are really cool ways that podcasts help, and it just means a lot to me when our listeners and our guests get to connect. So anyway, that said, this is probably a long-winded final 2-year run podcast, but this is where we are right now. And thanks so much. Look for more episodes to come out, probably on a slower drip basis here over the next few months as we ramp up some new things. I will be sharing you what we're doing and how we're doing it and how those things progress. But that's it. Thank you so much. I appreciate you and your support, and look for more episodes shortly, but probably in a different frequency. So that's it. Have a great rest of your day.
Welcome to the How to Scale Commercial Real Estate Show. Whether you are an active or passive investor, we'll teach you how to scale your real estate investing business into something big.